Chapter 1. There used to be a rich family named Zones. From the time as much as anyone who knows them remembers Zones' family. They were always a great family with the best communication skills, and all the family members were at a high position. In the same house known for its communication skills, a child was born and was named Eric Zones. He was a normal and healthy child. When he was 3 years old, to get money from his family, some strangers kidnapped him. While he was under those strangers' control, he saw that they were actually trafficking small kids. Seeing this, Eric was confused. Through his point of view, some strange uncles were forcing kids to sit in a truck. While a 3-year-old Eric was trying to understand the situation, he heard a child's sound, screaming to let him go. When Eric turned over and saw what was happening, he witnessed a sight that he never meant to see. The trafficker suddenly forced the kid to a side behind some sheets, and right after that, Eric saw blood coming out. He was totally afraid and fainted. After about 4 hours later, when he woke up, he found himself in the hospital and his parents were beside him. The doctor said he is fine. He just fainted from fear. What really happened was, when Eric fainted, that time the cops somehow got the whereabouts about the trafficking because of the phone call to Zone's family. All the kids were saved, but the kid who Eric saw the blood of was seriously injured and was under operation, after seeing that Eric grew a disorder in himself that no one was able to find out until he was enrolled in his school. When Eric was at his school, when his teacher asked him about his family and was casually talking with others, Eric didn't split a word and was trying to distance himself from all of the others. When this was reported the Zones family and Eric's parents, they said he is still a child, so maybe he is afraid of seeing new faces, and what he had gone through is probably the cause as well. This continued for the whole year, but everyone thought that when he will get used to the people, Eric would start to communicate with others, as their family was famous for their communication skills. But even after a year he didn't change. Eric would always distance himself from the others and was nearly never talking to anyone. Zone's family thought that something was just not right and decided to consult a psychiatrist. They also did some treatment for Eric and came to know that Eric has built up a communication disorder. Zone's family was in a bit of a shock, and they tried their best so that he can come out of it. But the actual reason was they didn't want anyone to know that Eric, who was the son of the Zones family, but bad at communication. Zone's family didn't let anyone know about Eric's condition, as it was disgraceful for the family of Zones, and was the point of view of this family. As a result, Eric became more isolated, because except his mother, no one cared even if he dies. They just wanted their name to not fall down. Eric's mother was the only one who understood his condition. She knew that what Eric had gone through was not something that even an adult could handle, so she had always tried her best to support him. Eric had his disorder, but he could openly talk with his mom, because Eric saw that his mother was the only one who actually cared about him. When everyone would scold him, he would get bullied in school and go through the tough medication. His mother was always there to support him. With time, Eric started to think that everyone can have his own language, and that the language isn't that thing that makes a conversation, but it actually is a medium to let the emotions of the human come out and reach another person. So he thought knowing more about and having knowledge over language and speaking skills would make his disorder go away. But one day when he was going to sleep, he saw blood coming out under his bed and saw some people running towards him, but when he asked for help, They stopped coming towards him and started laughing at him, saying, "You are waste, Zone's family. You cannot even talk to anyone. Why are you still alive?" And started to laugh hard.
And then when he became sad and looked down to his feet, he saw that he was standing on blood. And then with a shock, Eric opened his eyes and saw his mother sitting next to him and calling his name. Eric was crying and calling for help, so his mother stayed with him and tried to wake him up from the nightmare. When Eric said what happened to him in his dream, Eric's mother said, "Have you thought of doing something that is very important to you?" Eric replied yes, and said about what he was thinking, and what his thoughts were about the language and all. After this talk with his mother said that when we think or fix to do something in life that can change or affect our whole life, we get the fear that we are going to do something wrong or people would judge us, or we start to doubt our own decision and end up doing something that we didn't want, and we end up doing what others wanted us to do. But you, Eric, you don't do anything that others want you to do because everyone will only think about your bad. Do whatever you feel like you want to do, and by doing which, you can be happy. By hearing this, Eric felt as if he can do something as well, and fixed to find a way to live that would not affect his family's name. To that point, Zone's family had already given up on Eric, as they thought that he was a disgrace to his family, but who knew that Eric would change the whole world's way of thinking about him. When Eric was about 16 years old, he had started learning different languages, and had made his own language that only Eric and his mother could understand. While he was trying his best to communicate with others, he learned to talk to people in a clear manner, and had made a lot of improvement to his disorder. But still his family was rude as ever, and the only person who he was open to was his mother. Chapter 2. Once when Eric returned from his school, he saw that his mother had a terrible fever and was not able to stand up. He took take care of his mother with the help of the others, and after having his dinner when he was going to sleep, he overheard his mother mumbling and saying, "I wish my son had a normal life and could had a good life." Eric saw this and went to bed. The next day when Eric woke up and gone to check on his mother, he saw his mother sleeping. He went near his mother and said, "Don't worry, Mom, I will live as you want." The next day Eric went to his grandpa, who was the head of the Zones family, and said, "Grandpa, I think I should move out of this house." His grandpa said, "Where can you go and live? You cannot even talk properly. Where do you want to go? Just go back to your room. You good-for-nothing boy." Eric tried to convince his grandpa but couldn't, and went back to his room. The next day Eric tried again and failed, and he tried again the next day, but this time his grandpa got angry and said, "You want to go out of the house, right? Then all right. You are free to go anywhere, or you can live at our small house in some other village." Eric said, "I will live on my own, but now I am not able to make a living now, so please lend me some money until I graduate." His grandpa said, "You can live wherever you want. I will lend money as well. But there is a condition. You are not allowed to use Zone's family name, as you are just a disgrace to our family name." Eric accepted this condition and left the house the next month. Leaving Eric's mother, no one even cared. It was more like they were glad that he left the house. After some days of Eric's departure, Eric's grandpa realized that whenever he was trying to communicate with him, Eric never acted differently and was talking as if he never had the disorder. And right after some days, everyone started to feel as if they were lacking something. Whenever Eric called his mother, they would always talk in the language that they made. Everyone in the Zones family would laugh and make fun of them both. In the eyes of Zones family, the concept of making something new and trying to change his life is a big fool. They laughed, saying, "You are those fools who are talking about making a new language. What kind of game is that? We have a language that we speak, so what is the need of making a new so-called language?" Eric's mother didn't react, but only said one thing: "Time will give you the answer." After this came a time when Eric stopped coming to house to visit his family and stayed in the place where he was living. For about 7 years, Eric didn't even show his face to any of the Zones family members except his mother through video call. Time flew by, and Zones family had already started to drift apart. When Eric's grandpa was hospitalized and was in need of the family, no one extended a hand to him. Chapter 3. Once Eric's grandpa had heard some of his family members talking. One said, "What does that old hag think of himself? Always saying Zone's family is this and that, but he never really thinks of any of us as more than mere pawns." Another said, "He even kicked out Eric just because he was bad at communicating. If this goes on like this, he will throw us out of the house as well." Eric's grandpa thought about his behavior and about Eric, but the next day he found himself bedridden for some reason. When all his family members betrayed him and no one even tried to pay his nursing costs, he thought that after all he was wrong to assume that I gave all my children the right path. Eric's grandpa had money with him but was trying to see who would help him. After about 3 days, when Eric's grandpa recovered completely and bought money to pay for the doctor said that someone had paid your bills, sir. He was shocked at how he didn't discover who paid the bill, and suddenly he was given a notice. In the notice there was the invitation for the whole Zones family to join in a big summit of those people who were known for the communication skills from the whole world. Zone's family attended the summit. When they arrived at the place of the summit, it was arranged at a big mansion, and seeing this, everyone was very surprised. There they saw a young man who everyone was talking about. They were talking about how that young man knows each and every language of humankind, and how he is known as the best and the top communication master of the whole world. Hearing this, Eric's grandpa said, "I wish we had a son like this, not like that good-for-nothing Eric." Eric's mother said, "Do you even know what you were saying?" While this conversation was going on, a person stood on the stage in the mansion and started to talk. When everyone's attention was on him, he said, "I would like to introduce you the world's best communication master and the person who is known as the #1 in the whole world." Zone's family thought that, who is this guy? He must have a great talent. While they were thinking this, the person anchoring called out to his name and said, "Please come up on the stage, Mr. Eric." All the Zones family was a crisis, and they thought there is no way that is our Eric. He wasn't even able to talk. He was disgraced to the family name. Then came up to the stage from the darkness was Eric Zones. The whole Zones family couldn't utter a word from their mouth. But no one knew that Eric belonged to Zone's family. Eric's mother was the only one who was not shocked hearing this matter. To Eric's side there stood a girl. When a person asked who she was, Eric said, "She is the person who leaded me to where I am now." Right after that someone asked, "Second then, who was the first?" Eric replied with a smile, "My mother." When asked, "Is she present here?" Eric said yes, but I cannot say her name for some reason. At that time, Eric's mother said to Eric's grandpa that, "Do you know who was the person who took care of all of your nursing costs? It was Eric." After that, Eric's grandpa screamed Eric Zones in front of everyone and said, "Say your mother's name with dignity, you fool." Everyone in the summit stared at Eric and started talking that is Eric's family name Zones, and some said as expected from the Zones family. Hearing this, Eric's grandpa gone to the stage and said, "It's not as you all are thinking. The Zones family is not worthy to have such a great name." Eric's grandpa said when Eric was 3 years old, he was once kidnapped and saw something so terrifying that he built up communication disorder. We Zones family, rather than helping him coming out from his fear, we called him a disgrace in the name of the family. We used to think of him as a waste wheel of the strongest car, but didn't understand that we were those brakes that were stopping the best car from racing forward. When Eric left the house, we all felt a lonely heart trying to figure what happiness was, but couldn't say it out loud because we were fed up by the pride so much that we were not able to see anything. So I, the head of the Zones family, want to say, "Sorry, son. We were always wrong. You were not unfit for the Zones family. The Zones family was unfit to you." Eric hugged him in front of everyone and said, "I don't have anything to say except that my name is Eric Zones." Everyone clapped for them for a long time. After the summit, when Eric went to Zones family, someone asked, "Who is this girl, by the way?" Eric said, "When I was living alone, I found a girl standing at the roadside in heavy rain. I called out to her instinctively, and before I knew it, she had accepted my offer for shelter after letting her take a shower. I thought of asking her for a meal and then giving her an umbrella so that she could go to home. When she came out of the shower, she was crying. When I asked for what happened, she said that her parents were toxic and forced her to marry an old man who was more aged than her own father. When she refused, her parents kicked her out from the house, and since she still hadn't completed her graduation, she cannot find a good job as well. Hearing this, Eric said his part of the story as well, and offered her to stay with him until she would graduate and find a job. Until now, however, Eric had behaved, and after listening to his story, she thought that Eric was a nice person, but she was very considerate and had a mature mind. So she thought for a while and said, "I cannot accept until you fulfill my condition. First, Eric was not allowed to touch her, and two, and she would only stay if she gets a work." Eric said, "Okay, then you can take care of the house, but you have to continue your education, and I would provide you a house, food, and money for your job." She agreed and started her life with Eric. After that, they grew closer to each other. She always supported Eric and helped him whenever and however she could. After hearing this, Zone's family members praised her and asked Eric to start living with them, but Eric declined, and this time not only Eric's mother supported his decision, but his grandpa supported him as well. When Eric was asked in an interview that what is his opinion on language and communication, Eric replied, "Language is only a medium of how to say what we truly feel, and communication is something that is like a base to the language. But the most important isn't what language you talk or how you communicate. It's the human heart and its feeling that is important."